Guys, what is up? We're back talking cameras once again today, and we're talking about a camera that I've had for a few months now, and I'm going to let you know if it's still relevant in 2024. And that's the tried and true, everybody's favorite Ricoh GR3. So the Ricoh GR3, this is a 24 megapixel pocketable camera. And not only is it a pocketable camera, but it's a full APS-C sensor pocketable camera, which is pretty impressive. There's not that many cameras like this that can do what this can do in terms of portability. Don't get me wrong, I love my Sony a6700 that I'm recording on right now, but let's face it, that camera body, especially when paired with my Sony G Master 16-35, is not fitting in a pocket. It barely fits in most backpacks. This little guy is the most portable camera I've ever held, I've ever used. It's got a fixed lens. You cannot change it. It's not interchangeable in any capacity. And it's gonna get you approximately 35 millimeter focal length, and it's gonna do f2.8 to f16. So a little bit of range there. The Ricoh is very heavily advertised, marketed as a street photography camera, and 35 millimeter focal length for street photography is pretty much bang on. So what do I think the Ricoh GR3 does really well? I've really enjoyed just taking it out and shooting, and I don't really have to think too much about it because it just slides into a pocket or inside your coat. You can take it with you anywhere, whether you use it or not. It doesn't weigh all that much either, so it's not exactly a burden on you when you're out and about. It's like having a slightly higher quality iPhone, but we'll get to that in a bit. It's definitely not going to replace your full frame or say your a6700, your Nikon, but this has its place in portability and it has its place in, say, travel photography. It's a great camera to just chuck it in a bag and go out and do whatever you want with. For that, I think it's unmatched. But as I said, is it really a replacement for the iPhone? Because new iPhones have incredible sensors. The 15 Pro Max, for example, has a 48 megapixel sensor, and it has varied lens ranges, although they're mostly virtualized. That doesn't mean it's a bad camera though. I do think you get really nice pictures out of this 24 megapixel sensor. I think it captures a lot of detail. It's got great dynamic range. I've shot in daylight and at nighttime, and it does a pretty good job. Not a lot of graining in either scenario. And it does have IBIS, which is pretty surprising for something this small. Another really nice thing about the Ricoh GR3 compared to your traditional APS-C sensor camera from Sony, Nikon, etc., is that this has internal memory, which I find great because if you are a beginner photographer and you just want to pick this up and go out and shoot, you don't need to get another memory card. You just put it in your pocket and off you go. It's only about 2 gigabytes. It's not a ton. If you're shooting RAW, which this does do, it's only going to capture maybe 20, 30 pictures. But if you shoot JPEG, which again, this camera also does, you can probably squeeze out closer to 100 shots. I just think that is really convenient. If you leave the house and forget a memory card, at least you have some internal storage that you can shoot onto. And I can't say the same about any other camera that I've owned to date. I also really like that this guy has a built-in macro mode that's triggerable with just one button click, and it is pretty solid quality. Now, let's talk about the things that I don't like or that are sort of indicative of the age of the Ricoh GR3, because it did come out in March of 2019. So in 2024, this camera does show its age in a couple of areas. First off, let's talk about the interface itself. Now, this camera starts up remarkably quickly. It's like within a second booted and ready to shoot, but the actual user interface itself is definitely not as refined or intuitive as you'd get on any modern camera. It just lacks the refinement and shine and clarity of the newer interfaces. The other part of it too is when you're actually shooting. It does take a little bit longer to react and lock on to what you're focusing on before it gets the shot. Again, you're not going to see this in a modern camera, but at least once it does lock on, it does usually capture a pretty solid quality photo. It does require that you take that extra second to line up your shot and make sure everything is set before you press that shutter button. And again, while the internal storage is pretty nice to have, 2 gigs is way too little for modern day shooting. Again, that's only going to get you like 20 raw photos. And if you are going to take photography seriously, you want to be shooting in RAW, so you have the maximum ability to edit. So a bit of a downside, although it is still, in my mind, a pro and a con. It also has on the back a fixed screen. Now, a lot of the pocketable cameras, the fixed lens cameras, say your Fujifilms, your Leicas, they're going to at least tilting screens now. Maybe on the GR4, there'll be a tilt screen at the minimum. And now, while the GR3 can capture 1080p video at 60 FPS, probably not on the internal memory though, because it'll fill up like that, the video quality is bad. It's just a sign of the times. I hope the GR4 and future versions of this camera are going to do a lot more in the video department. For now, this is really a point and shooter though. And the last and probably the biggest downside for me of the Ricoh GR3 in this day and age is its price, because this camera is still over 1,300 Canadian dollars in 2024, which is a lot of money for what it is. A lot of the competition has caught up. A lot of the competition has put out newer, better products. Fujifilm is owning the pocketable camera space right now. While I do love the look and feel and the portability of the GR3, I don't think what it offers anymore is enough to justify its price tag in 2024. So that is the perfect segue into my final thoughts and conclusion, because I've owned this camera now for about 4 months. And do I think it's worth it in 2024? Probably not anymore, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, as a point and shooter that you can throw in your pocket and take anywhere and not have to worry about it, it's great. It is a great device for that. But you know what else you can carry around with you, not necessarily have to worry too much about throwing around and getting the good shot or the right shot? Your iPhone, or your Android phone, or any modern smartphone for that matter. All these phones are capturing 4K. All these phones have 40 plus megapixel sensors now. All these phones have multiple sensor and lens ranges, virtualized or physical or hybrid of them. It's all here. And when a modern smartphone costs you about $1,000, it's actually more compelling to just pick up a brand new smartphone. Yes, you're not going to get that true APS-C sensor appearance. You're not going to get that bokeh. You're going to lose some things that software and phone cameras are just not there at yet. But if it's a matter of capturing it all the time because you have a super fast, brand new device, that's what it comes down to. The Ricoh GR3, for me, it essentially comes down to being that pocketable camera when I want to get something a little bit better looking from a bokeh and lens and dynamic range perspective than my iPhone. But most of the time, unfortunately, I don't reach for it anymore. That's my thoughts on the Ricoh GR3. But what do you guys think? Is it still worth it for the portability factor? Is it still worth the money in 2024 in your eyes? Let's have a conversation as always, guys, down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this review, and we'll see you again soon in the next video.